Every family gathering turned into a public roast of my failures and secrets. I was 16 when I first realized something was off with Uncle Tommy. Family gatherings at our suburban Ohio home were a big deal. Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, you name it. The backyard would be buzzing with cousins chasing each other, the smell of grilled hot dogs and apple pie in the air, and relatives sprawled across lawn chairs, catching up. I loved those days, or at least I used to. They felt warm, like a cozy blanket of belonging. But somewhere along the way, Uncle Tommy turned them into a stage for my humiliation. It started small. I was a shy kid, awkward in that way most teenagers are, trying to figure out who I was. I'd confide in him because he seemed like the cool adult, someone who'd listen without judgment. I'd tell him about my crush on a girl in my math class, how I'd fumble my words around her, or how I bombed a history presentation because my nerves got the better of me. He'd nod, pat my shoulder, and say he got it, that he'd been there. I trusted him. He was family after all. But then, at a summer barbecue with the sun dipping low and fireflies starting to flicker, he'd lean back in his chair, beer in hand, and start talking. Hey, remember when our girl here was too scared to even say hi to that crush of hers? The table would erupt in laughter, my cheeks burning as I stared at my plate of potato salad. I'd try to laugh it off, but inside I felt like I'd been punched. He'd twist my stories, making them sound pathetic or exaggerated, like I was some bumbling kid who couldn't get anything right. My cousins would snicker, my aunts would give me these pitying looks, and my parents would just shake their heads like I was a lost cause. It wasn't just one-off comments. Every gathering, he'd have a new story. Like the time I told him I was stressed about failing a biology test. At the next family dinner, he announced to everyone, our scholar over here thought she'd flunk out of high school over one test. More laughter. More pity. I started noticing how relatives treated me differently, like I was fragile, or worse, a joke. My older cousin even started calling me the nervous one, like it was my brand. I tried to brush it off, telling myself he didn't mean any harm. Maybe he just thought he was being funny. But it kept happening. He'd bring up things I'd told him in confidence, like how I cried when my best friend moved away sophomore year. He'd spin it into some overblown tale about me sobbing for weeks until everyone was chuckling. I'd sit there, forcing a smile while my stomach churned. I started dreading family events. The smell of my mom's famous cornbread, once a comfort, now made me nauseous because I knew what was coming. By the time I was 17, I was done sharing with him. I'd learned my lesson. But that didn't stop him. He started making things up. At a cousin's graduation party, he told everyone I'd chickened out of trying out for the school play even though I'd never even mentioned wanting to. Another time, he claimed I'd freaked out during a driving lesson and nearly crashed the car. Total nonsense. I'd passed my driving test on the first try. But the story stuck. Relatives would ask me about these fake incidents with raised eyebrows, like they were waiting for me to confirm I was the mess he described. The worst came when I was 18 at a big Christmas Eve dinner at our house. The living room was packed, fairy lights twinkling on the tree, and everyone was in that warm, festive mood. I was feeling good for once, wearing a new red sweater, helping my mom set out the desserts. Then Uncle Tommy stood up, clinking his glass like he was about to give a toast. My heart sank. He started telling this wild story about how I'd gotten into trouble with the law over some vague, ridiculous incident. He painted it like I'd been caught sneaking out or something, laughing it off as youthful rebellion. The room went quiet. My aunts exchanged glances. My dad looked confused and my mom's face tightened. I wanted to disappear. I spoke up, my voice shaking, saying it wasn't true. He waved it off, grinning, saying, "Oh, come on, it's just a joke." But the damage was done. People were whispering, giving me those looks again. Later that night, as I was grabbing a soda from the kitchen, I overheard him talking to his wife in the hallway. His voice was low, smug. "I love messing with that kid," he said. "Keeps things lively." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just carelessness. He was doing it on purpose. Update 1. I couldn't let it go after that Christmas Eve. Hearing him admit he enjoyed humiliating me flipped a switch. I was done being his punchline. But I didn't know how to fight back without making things worse. If I called him out in front of everyone, I'd look like the dramatic one and he'd probably spin it into another funny story. I needed to be smarter. I started paying attention to him, watching how he acted. He thrived on attention, always positioning himself as the fun, charming guy at every gathering. He'd tell stories about his own life too, exaggerated tales about his high school glory days or how he saved the day at work. People ate it up. But I noticed something else. He never targeted anyone else like he did me. Not my cousins, not my parents, not even my little brother. Just me. It felt personal, like I was his chosen scapegoat. I decided to test the waters. At the next family barbecue, I stayed quiet, kept my distance, and watched. Sure enough, he tried to start a story about how I'd bombed some school project. But this time I was ready. I didn't argue or get defensive. Instead, I smiled and changed the subject, asking my aunt about her new job. It threw him off. He tried again later, but I kept redirecting the conversation, talking about neutral stuff like the food or the weather. For the first time, he didn't get the reaction he wanted. No laughter, no pitying looks. Just awkward silence. It felt like a tiny victory. But it wasn't enough. He was still spreading lies, and I could tell people were starting to believe his version of me. My cousin even asked me if I was okay after hearing about my supposed trouble with the law. I wanted to scream. Instead, I started documenting everything. Every story he told, every lie, every time he twisted my words. I kept a notebook, jotting down dates, what he said, and who was there. It made me feel like I had some control, like I wasn't just a victim of his games. Then came a plot twist I didn't see coming. At a family picnic, I overheard my mom talking to my aunt in the kitchen while I was grabbing napkins. She sounded upset, saying how she didn't like how Uncle Tommy picked on me. My aunt agreed, saying she'd noticed it too but thought it was just his sense of humor. My mom said she'd tried talking to him once, but he brushed it off, saying I was too sensitive. I froze, my heart pounding. My mom had noticed? She tried to defend me? I'd always thought my parents bought into his stories, but here was proof they didn't. It changed everything. I wasn't as alone as I thought. Update 2. Knowing my mom was on my side gave me a boost, but I still didn't know how to stop him. Confronting him directly felt risky, he was too good at turning things around. I needed a plan that would expose him without making me look petty. I started thinking about how he operated. He relied on people believing his charm, on the fact that no one questioned him. I decided to flip that on its head. At the next family event, a big Labor Day cookout, I tried something new. Instead of staying quiet, I started telling my own stories. Not about my failures, but about small, positive things. Like how I'd helped organize a fundraiser at school or how I taught myself to bake cookies from scratch. I kept it light, casual, but I made sure to talk before he could. It was like staking my claim to my own narrative. People listened, smiled, even asked questions. For once, the focus wasn't on his version of me. He tried to jump in with one of his funny stories, but I didn't let him derail me. I just kept talking, steering the conversation back to something else. I could see him getting frustrated, his smile tightening. Then came another twist. A few weeks later, at a smaller family dinner, he told a story about how I'd freaked out during a camping trip we'd never even taken together. I was ready. I'd brought my notebook, not to show anyone, but to keep my confidence up. I calmly said I didn't remember that trip and asked him to clarify when it happened. He fumbled, saying it was a while back, but I pressed gently, asking for details. The table got quiet. My dad jumped in, confused, saying he didn't recall any camping trip either. Uncle Tommy backtracked, laughing it off, but I could tell he was rattled. For the first time, people were questioning him. I started doing this more gently, challenging his stories without being confrontational. I'd ask simple questions like, when did that happen, or I don't remember it that way. I wasn't accusing him, just planting doubts. Slowly, I noticed people weren't laughing as much at his stories. My aunt stopped giving me those pitying looks. My cousin started asking me about my life directly, not through his lens. It felt like I was taking back control bit by bit. But then at a Halloween party, he went big. He told everyone I'd run away from home for a night when I was 16, implying I was some troubled kid. It was a lie so bold it shocked me. I'd never run away once. I'd stayed late at a friend's house and forgot to call home, but that was it. This time, I didn't stay calm. My heart was racing and I felt the surge of anger. I stood up, my voice steady but loud, and said I'd never done that and I was tired of his made-up stories. The room went dead silent. He tried to laugh it off, but my mom backed me up, saying she'd had enough of his jokes too. My dad nodded, looking at him like he was seeing him for the first time. Uncle Tommy's face turned red and he left early, saying he wasn't feeling well. Finale, that Halloween was a turning point. I didn't realize how much my family had been watching, how many of them had started questioning him too. After that night, things shifted. At the next family gathering, Thanksgiving, Uncle Tommy was quieter. He didn't tell any stories about me. I think he knew the tide had turned. My mom later told me she'd talked to him privately, telling him to stop or he wouldn't be welcome at our house anymore. I don't know what else she said, but it worked. I kept telling my own stories, focusing on the good stuff, my plans for college, the road trip I took with friends, the way I'd finally mastered my grandma's pancake recipe. People listened. They saw me, not his caricature of me. My cousins stopped calling me the nervous one. My aunt started asking about my life with genuine interest. It was like I'd finally stepped out of his shadow. But the biggest twist came a year later at my 19th birthday dinner. Uncle Tommy showed up, which surprised me. I thought he'd skip it after everything. He was subdued, sitting quietly at the table. Toward the end of the night, he pulled me aside. I braced myself, expecting another jab. Instead, he apologized. He said he'd been going through some rough stuff in his own life and had taken it out on me. He didn't go into details and I didn't ask, but it was the first time I'd ever seen him vulnerable. I didn't forgive him right away, too much had happened, but I nodded and said I appreciated it. I don't know if he'll ever fully change, but he hasn't told a single story about me since. Family gatherings feel like they used to, warm, loud, full of laughter, but the kind that lifts you up, not tears you down. I still keep my notebook just in case, but I don't need it as much anymore. I've learned to speak up, to own my story, and to trust that the people who matter will see me for who I am, not who someone else tries to make me out to be.